Hello, I'm Paul Peterson. I'm the editor-in-chief at Education Next, and the reviewer of our books for Education Next is Nathan Glazer, and he's here with me today. And we're going to talk about a new book out by E.D. Hirsch, The Making of Americans. E.D. Hirsch has been very much a figure who has campaigned for content learning, not learning skills, but learning real content in the classroom. So, Nathan, what would you say is the core idea of E.D. Hirsch's work over the years?
Well, it's remarkable how important his idea has been. I think his first book on cultural literacy, and then it's all the subsequent work, but cultural literacy, I think, the most important education book of the second half of the 20th century, I would say, straightforward, because of the shift from the notion of technique. And technique was certainly the notion of reading, how you do it, whether you do it this way, whether you do it that way, and to the notion of literacy. What are you reading? What is it saying? What is it trying to say? What does it mean? And the notion that it needs a background of knowledge. A background of knowledge that probably middle-class kids can get a lot of in the home or so on, and working-class kids will get a very different one, and one that isn't very helpful for their education, etc., etc. But that background of knowledge is crucial to understand what it is you're reading. What is Achilles' heel? And people could attack him for that. But he then made a list. You have to know these things to know what you're reading about. Just as if you were reading, something on a cricket match, you'd have to know what cricket is and what the rules are before you made any sense of it.
Well, that's why I can never understand a single article on cricket.
And I've never been able to, too. And foreigners can't understand articles on baseball. The rules are different. So this is terribly important, and this led him into a movement. I don't know if he was intending a movement when he made this point, which was really took on the whole reading establishment, so to speak, in their arguments of whether it should be phonics or whole word, because it was a different story. This is, okay, so you've spelled it out, you figured it out, you've seen the whole word. What's it saying to you? And then he moved on from that to a movement. His core groups, his schools based on a core curriculum. He made lists for each grade. It was an amazing job. Okay, I'm in on this. I'm going to tell you what you need, what background you need in order to understand what you're reading.
But he's been very poorly received by people in schools of education. Why is he so unpopular?
That is mystifying to me, since what he does is so important. Actually, we did have him once visit the Graduate School of Education, I remember, and I was delighted to have him. And why is he so unpopular? Well, because I suppose because schools of education have basically not been based on content except the content of psychology or, learning, how to learn. And the whole notion of a world of content, which includes literature, science, public affairs, is something they can't seem to manage. It's not their style. So what are they going to do with it? Now, it can be done, and as he's done in his schools, it's an effort. But I suppose there's been an anti-content bias in schools of education, I would guess, and that's a significant issue.
Well, I remember when I was an assistant professor in the University of Chicago School of Education, and they said, there is no such thing as curriculum anymore. We're not going to teach curriculum anymore.
Yeah.
That was back in the 1960s. And so I think at some point they gave up on curriculum. They said, we do not have a theory of curriculum.
Yeah.
We don't know what to teach.
We don't know what should come first and what should come second and all that.
Right.
Yeah.
But he's now gone back to
not
that.
in mathematics.
He says we do know what comes first. We do know what comes second.
Yeah.
And you got to teach in this order if kids are going to learn.
Right.
Now, what's the new book? This is called The Making of Americans.
After cultural literacy, there are a few more. And similar arguments. He does keep up with school research remarkably, and research in the field of education, as in the field of psychology, even though he's an English professor, and I suppose still is. And this new book, he tries to extend the idea of literacy and cultural literacy to the field of citizenship and being a citizen in public action. Now, this is a kind of challenging task. You commented in a discussion of a book we just had that the least popular course in high school is is a physical education, but I would think maybe civics matches it. In other words, this has been a very unsuccessful course, and well, he hopes to make it more interesting, more relevant, more valid. In other words, to really, you might say
well, what's the content he wants in civics?
well, he wants. I suppose he wants less of a content of technique and who is your congressman and who is your alderman, and a congress of a content of rules and the mechanisms, which are very important in politics, but nevertheless one thing, and more a content of history and significant event. And more content, really more like American history.
So maybe is he trying to teach kids what government does instead of how to influence the government?
I think that's one factor. Yes, it's yes, away from very similar to what he was arguing in cultural literacy, away from methods and into more significant objectives. And I think it's in other words, an objective which can engage people more. How do we get to this point, and so on. And it's now, of course, having set out his thesis, there was so much hard work in producing the curriculum, so to speak, the background materials necessary for cultural literacy. How you spell this out is another hard job. And I suspect he's probably, if he has enough energy and life lasts long enough, he'll get into it.
So we may hear some more from E.D. Hirsch, and
Yes.
in the meantime, there's another worthy book out there. So thank you very much, Nathan.